So this viral discussion that's going on right now is not about hitting the wall. It's not about men aging like wine either. This is about leverage and how time changes that. So for context, this creator, Dana Dane, she is responding to a previous conversation about hitting the wall, and she acknowledged that leverage does shift over time.
Hitting the wall was a very real thing. I never argued with Kevin Samuels about that. Because the reality is the older you get, the worse your options get.
So she's not denying that reality, she's expanding upon it. So let's get into this clip.
Me being single at my age didn't come from bad decision making, stupid. It came from me never finding the man that I wanted to be with. I don't know in what delusional world y'all men live in where you think that it was all of these wonderful, great men running around when we was in our 20s and we just passed up on all of these great guys. The attractive men when we were in our 20s were doing what attractive men do, which is be players, talk to a whole bunch of different women, and never want to settle down. You do understand that, right? So given that the attractive men in their 20s didn't want to settle down, that left us with ugly dudes, dudes with kids, and dudes who didn't have themselves together. It's the same thing now that I'm older. The options didn't go from good to bad. It went from bad to worse, right? Now, instead of dudes just having kids, they got kids and grandchildren. And if you think some of them was unattractive back then, add on now the fact that some of them is out of shape, they ain't got no hairline, and they missing side teeth.
Ooh-wee.
Wasn't financially stable in their 20s, and a lot of them still ain't financially stable. Some of them still paying child support from the same babies that they was having when they was in their 20s. Y'all gotta start being for real. These podcast lies that all of these men was gonna get older and they was just gonna become these rich men, that didn't happen for most of them. Sorry. A lot of the men in their 20s who was doing all that settling down and getting married were undesirable men. Men on the verge of losing their hairlines. Men who didn't have no bunch of options of women to choose from in the first place. That's the reason why it was so easy for them to settle down. And just like anything else, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. And I'm sure some women got lucky and they were able to find desirable men to settle down with in their 20s. But the exceptions don't make the rule. And I'd argue how many of those women and men are still married to this day. How many of those marriages actually lasted? Shout out to the ones that did. I know how y'all like to rewrite history and pretend as if it was all of these wonderful, great men for us to choose from in our 20s. And we just wanted to be outside and we wanted to party with our girls and we didn't want to settle down. That's not what was happening. The options weren't there back then. And you're still in the same position. The dudes who older, who are still desirable, they still don't want to settle down. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. It just gets worse. That's the part you're missing. So there's nothing that I can warn the younger girls about except letting them know that if you think it's bad now, it's gonna get worse.
So here's what stands out about this clip. Now, she pointed out that many of the most attractive men in their 20s were exploring their options, which means that they were undisciplined, non-committal, playing the field, based on what she said. She also said that even in their 20s, some women weren't surrounded by great options. They were left with men who felt unattractive to them, already had multiple children, were financially unstable, or just felt like too much of a risk. So this isn't just about aging, it's about early sorting. The most attractive men were exercising optionality. Some disciplined men paired off early, and what remained didn't feel in line with her standards. Now, when she says undesirable, that's relative, but undesirable to whom? Now, to her, that might mean multiple children, unresolved ex drama, financial instability, poor health habits, lifestyle patterns that she doesn't respect. So that's not about human worth. That's about misalignment. And the same sorting happens on the other side, because there are men who would describe certain women as misaligned with their standards as well. She also says the men she considers more desirable are still not settling. That tells you something, because it suggests perceived leverage is still influencing behavior. If someone believes they still have strong options, they delay commitment. Optionality reduces urgency, but not settling isn't automatically strength. It can be leverage, it can be avoidance, It can also be miscalculation, because in every stage of life, people act according to the leverage they believe that they have. So here's where the math comes in, because she argues that there are more undesirable men than desirable ones. But undesirable based on what? Because if we look strictly at children and income, men statistically have fewer children and higher earnings on average. So if the filter is no children and financial stability, that alone wouldn't necessarily shrink the dating pool. But when you add looks, and looks absolutely matter through your 20s, 30s, and even 40s, then that overlap will narrow. If a woman requires financial stability, no children, emotional maturity, strong health, physical attraction, then the overlap shrinks. That's not judgment, but rather compounded filters. And the same thing happens for men, right? Because when men require youth, beauty, low baggage, lifestyle alignment, no children, and emotional peace, their overlap narrows too. Desirability isn't just about raw supply, it's about the overlap between your standards and the available market. And here is the uncomfortable part. If women say money and looks matter, fair, but do their own looks and lifestyle align with the type of man they want? And if men say youth, beauty, and peace matter, do their own finances, discipline, and emotional maturity align with the type of woman they want? Because desire doesn't determine outcome, alignment does. And the same can be said about financial stability. It doesn't just fall on men. If financial discipline is a requirement, it should be reciprocal. Financial expectations without financial self-assessment create frustration. When both sides stack high filters, the overlap narrows. That's not a moral failure, that's math. Now let's zoom back to youth. Because some women believed better options would come along, and some men believed they could settle down whenever they were ready. And that's betting on future leverage. And time doesn't negotiate with optimism. You can overplay your hand, you can misjudge vetting, you can mistake potential for alignment. Both genders can do that. However, the difference is what happens when you realize the landscape has shifted. Some people become bitter, others become calibrated. They understand that the overlap between who they prefer and who prefers them may be more narrow. That doesn't mean they're undesirable. It means they're aware. And I also noticed in the screenshot, someone asked why she doesn't teach younger women to make better decisions. But that question assumes that people want to be taught. And adults don't change because someone online corrects them. They change when incentives change. Commentary isn't command. And here's the part I want to land clearly. Limited options don't automatically equal lack of accountability, because you can recognize that your pool is smaller and still fully own your decisions. Those two things can coexist. Time doesn't punish men. Time doesn't punish women. Time exposes what you maintained and magnifies what you neglected. The negotiation changes, but that's not defeat, that's maturity. Now, do you think the dating pool shrinks because of aging or because of stacked standards? And at what point does leverage shift more because of discipline than because of looks? Are standards reciprocal in today's market, or are people expecting outcomes they don't align with? Now, if you appreciate conversations like this that go beyond surface takes and actually map behavior, then subscribe to the channel and hit the hype button, y'all, because it helps to push the video out to new viewers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.